Most kind, loving Heavenly Father, we thank you for all the blessings of this life. We thank you for being with us in times of need. We thank you for helping us through those difficult times. Please continue to be with each one of us. Help us in our efforts to serve you, to be successful in reaching others with your word and with the wonderful saving message that we find in your word. Please guide us through our lives and forgive us when we fail you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, so as you recall, last week we were talking about various transitions in our kids' lives in different ages and how we can best help them, how we can best, I forgot the word I used last week, invest our time and invest ourselves in them, how we can best invest in them. So we got through the 6th grade age, so we'll pick up today and hit the 7th through 12th graders. And then for those of us who have adult children, we'll talk about them briefly as well. That'll finish off that lesson and we'll get into the next one. But as you recall, up to this point, we've already taught our children, or we should have already taught our children about discipline, about responsibilities. We taught them to be respectful, to have boundaries. We hopefully have taught them to be involved, especially with the church. We taught them that it's okay to be different, that we are called to be different in the Word. And we also learned that we need to listen to them as well. So with all that foundation built, as we get into the 7th through 12th graders, those things have already been set. So let's think about some of the characteristics of our 7th through 12th graders. We know that at this point they're starting to cut the apron strings as they start to develop their own lives and becoming again more independent. They seem to be more opinionated. They think they have the world figured out many times when they get to that age. They can be rebellious, but they're also seekers. They're seekers of truth, seekers of answers. They want to know why even more. Deep thoughts and deep truths about why. They can be self-absorbed. They can question authority. And at this age is when they must develop their own faith. What other things come to mind? That's my list. What other things come to mind when you think about characteristics of a 7th through 12th grader?
They're probably still in limbo about who they are and what they are.
Trying to figure out who they are, what they want to do.
What their gifts are. Mm-hmm. It's all, kind of everything is right. It's all relative to the minute too, because of their emotional state and their hormonal state. So it's such a roller coaster period of their life.
You bet.
That, the same day they can be at a high and the next day they're at an extreme low, and the kid may not even be able to put a finger on what it is or why.
Right, and you're right, hormones take a big cause of that, or are a big cause of that, for sure.
The young men are physically, sexually driven in a way that the young ladies may not be, so it changes for them big time. And there's a whole other gamma of, I guess, opportunity for education and personal challenges that they have to learn how to develop, armor.
Well, and along the same lines, young ladies, if they get any attention whatsoever from a young man, that's what they're seeking. They're wanting that, closeness, not the physical type. But if they get any of that type of attention and stuff that, really affects them.
That was probably the greatest thing that I could say. You're maturing physically, and those things that were not flipped on, those switches that were not turned on in 5th, 6th grade, those younger ages, they're now flipped on, and you are.
And unfortunately, some of the switches are switching earlier.
Yes.
Earlier. We're
So
seeing that way too often in our grade schools these days.
That was a major part of
Yeah.
my life, and I'm sure it is for other.
Yep, you definitely have those hormonal changes going on this time. What else?
As much as they have this independence, they still want to fit in and be accepted.
Oh yeah, that's a great one.
So that's, you know, they struggle, I say, you know, we all struggle probably with wanting to be accepted, be popular to a certain extent, or to a great extent, depends, you know, and, you just can't attribute everything to peer pressure because it shows its way in so many different ways.
Yep.
So, it's something else. But also, a lot of times they want to, like you said, be intimidated, want to do things their own way. They also want the freedom of independence, you know. They want to maybe get a job or go do this, go do that. So
Yes.
a lot of the decision making is based on me, you know, more so than us or family or whatever.
Yep.
I remember being younger, just a little bit, not a whole lot, but I remember being younger, and you know that all these things that they want. I remember at that age, that me, my friends, and the people that I wasn't even friends with. It's not so much that you want those things; you want the appearance of those things, because you're not fully understanding or realizing what's going on around you. Stuff, but what you want is the appearance of it because you want to be treated like you're unique, like you're special, like you're not part of. I remember, like Wes was saying, you know, kids don't want to be part of the mainstream. They want to be different. They want to be unique. So what do? They uniquely all dress alike. They uniquely all do the same thing. They uniquely all try to accomplish the same goal the same way.
That's what
And if you challenge that and you tell them, you're like, this is ridiculous. Look, you all look alike. You're not helping because in the end, deep down, they know. But what they want is they want the respect. You know, they want to. And I wonder if maybe that's not a better strategy for if you get a kid who looks like they're just trying so hard. It's like, okay, well, tell them you've done it. Good job, you've done it, and then see if maybe that dials it back a little bit, because it's really the appearance of that they want.
That's good. No, that's exactly right. I mean, that's where we get fashion trends and fads, is because everybody wants to be different, but like you said, all being different the same.
Yeah.
That's good. So that kind of helps me lead us into our part, our investment. We can help them see the pros and cons, because while they don't necessarily believe it always, we've been there. We may not have had the exact same situation, but we still have the exact same temptations, exact same, many times, issues that they're going through. Help them see the pros and cons. You know, and don't be afraid to step in on decision making when necessary. If they're going down the wrong path, obviously, help them by taking on that decision and making them aware of why that's happening. So 7th through 12th graders, we also must give, or they also have, we must give them, and they already have more responsibility than they did as a younger age. As we talked about job, school a lot of times is more difficult. They have extracurricular activities, whether it's through school or outside of school. So they have more responsibilities, and we need to work with them through those things. We need to teach them about stewardship and how to handle the money. They're going to be into the real world real soon at that age, and they need to know how to take care of their money and what stewardship means in the church. Driving is a privilege, so still discipline when needed. That's one of the biggest disciplines you can have usually on a 16, 17-year-old is taking away those car keys.
It's getting to be a little bit different, we've noticed though, because even in the business world, our younger people, a lot of them have not been driving that long.
Yeah.
They're not getting their license until later, so you've got this 21-year-old that you're about to turn loose with a company vehicle, they've only been driving for a year.
Yeah, that's
All
a
right.
very good point. You're right.
I know some of the younger people who, they are 21, 22, and they still don't drive. They don't want
Terrified.
to.
Yeah. No, you're right. There's definitely a few of those.
I mean, I was an emergency vehicle operations instructor.
Yeah.
So even kids that were, ink was still drying on their medical license at 19 years old, and I'm teaching them how to handle a multi-ton ambulance
Right.
at high speed. It was nerve-wracking.
It's a different motivation these days. You know, when we were young, our motivation was, if I'm gonna get away from my parents and go see my friends, my license is the best way to get that done. And now,
They don't have to get away to see their friends.
yeah, well, and now they've been hanging out with their friends, playing video games online, or just doing everything online to the point that there's really, no need for it. People aren't as eager to go get that
That's
license.
very
Well,
true.
they're also not combined.
So, I would say
They're
take the
small.
internet away. It's bigger than car keys now.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Take the internet away. Is
Oh,
bigger
no,
than car
absolutely.
keys.
That's a huge one right
They have
there.
a phone.
Yeah.
Well, you can give them a phone. If they don't have the internet on it, I'd like to see what they can do with it. You can call them,
If they text,
go ahead.
they can still text. That'd be the
Yeah.
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 I think there's a level of independence that we kind of have nurtured. We have allowed and we have moved along with the times. And even in the church, you could say in our Christian homes, you have to kind of fight against it. The internet, the phones, the worldly influence, because there are times as in their lives that we almost push them to it as a way to get some peace and quiet, or a way to get some
Right.
personal time, or an out for you as a parent. And so another reason, the lack of interest in the driving, or the lack of interest to continue to progress along in a maturity that you would think, okay, why don't you get a job? Why aren't you doing man, they're spoiled rotten. Like, the food's in the fridge, they got every game and entertainment and all these things at their disposal. And we wonder why they don't produce, why they don't move forward in those ways. And they don't have to drive, because like you said, it's almost like DoorDash in every form, and we're providing it. And so, when we were kids, you didn't have that, and your idea of growth is just like you said, I gotta go get it. And it's not that way now, so it is a challenge to not necessarily keep it old school or primitive, but to try and find that motivational balance that you can still accomplish that.
Well, and that goes back to where if they want something, teach them about wants and needs. They want something, they need to figure out how to go buy it through either getting a job and earning the money or whatever, saving the money from birthdays or whatever they're doing. They need to learn how to do that. And like you said, our investment is don't just provide it for them, right? We can't be
You're teaching them what to rely on.
That's right.
And if they can't rely on themselves at all, it's dangerous.
That's right. And we can spoil them as long as we don't spoil them right.
Yeah.
And what I mean about that is, they're spoiled to the point that they don't have any needs. All their needs are met. They have a good meal, they have a roof over their head. All those needs are met. When they get rotten is when they start getting every want they want, right? Every desire they have is met. And that's where the trouble comes in. So we need to also keep that electronic curfew. That's part of the discipline at this age still. We talked about that last week for the 3rd through 6th graders, but that's also this age. Keep that electronic curfew. We need to trust but verify, yes.
One thing I think is important too, we realize with all this electronics and stuff, how they communicate is different. I know as they get older, I tell Kelsey, you need to go do this, you need to call this person, talk to them. Scared them to death to call somebody.
Yeah.
But they can text and they can do this, do that, But as far as calling somebody and say, hey, I need to schedule a appointment, get my oil changed, or whatever it may be, you know, call and check and see if your application for this went through, whatever. Did not want to do it whatsoever.
Exactly.
Because it's so much easier and impersonal to text.
Yeah.
And when you're talking to somebody face to face, or even on the phone, it's a whole different thing.
It's stressful for a lot of people, for sure, because, you know, you have that back and forth, you don't know, you think you may not have the answer they want when they ask it immediately. Whereas if they text it, you can take time, research it, and text it back, right? So it is scary for a lot of people, you're right, you're right. Trust but verify, so you need to know where they are and where they're going. If they say they're gonna be at a friend's house, there's no problem giving them a call later that evening to make sure they're still there, you know? So trust but verify. You need to know their friends. Be the hangout house. What better way to keep an eye on your own kid is if all the other kids are at your house, and then you can know what they're doing. You can, you know, still be the kind of people that they want to be around as far as do fun things and that kind of thing, but not anything that's inappropriate, obviously. Date to find a mate. Date to find a mate. If a boyfriend or girlfriend aren't someone they see themselves marrying, they need to break it off. That's the message there. If it's someone that, you know, oh no, I'm just dating them because, you know, so-and-so said they look cute or whatever, that's the wrong motivation. They need to understand what dating is actually for. It's to find a mate. Goes back to this, you know, friends and boyfriend, girlfriends is, First Corinthians 15:33. Bad company corrupts good morals. You need to know who they're with. And if you're the hangout house, you know the kind of friends they have because you're with them. And you can be a good influence on not only your child, but their friends as well. Teach them to be aware of their surroundings. They need to always be watching because there are bad people in this world. And they need to be aware that just because someone can come up friendly doesn't mean that their motives are friendly. So they need to be aware of their surroundings. So we can't live in fear, however. We have to trust that we've raised them well enough for them to make good decisions, trust that God is going to protect them, but we have to actually, you know, make sure we've helped them work out their own salvation. They need to have that study time with us and, you know, raise them in the church as far as being involved, being in attendance. Obviously, prayer. You need to pray with them and keep them constantly in your prayers. So they need to work out their own salvation, and we can help them with that. We need to find peace that they have been saved eternally if they have obeyed the gospel. And of course, if not, we need to help them get to that point. Never stop parenting, even up through their graduation from high school. Never stop parenting, and that will bring us to our next section. It's adult children. What other comments you have about 7th to 12th graders?
I have a question about advice I've given, and I'm like the collective wisdom in here to make sure I'm not giving people bad advice. Is that a good way to start this? No, I've given some advice to people, and something that I think that I'm going to try to do, and because it's something you have to build yourself up for, so I'm starting now. But someone asked me one time about their kids. They said, you know, well, what do you do? What do you do? I said, well, I think at some point you have to just be really anchored in who you are and what you're about. And you just have to kind of, at some point, let go. And they will know where to find you. Because you can't always just spend your whole life chasing your kids every time you see them going in a direction. Now, I'm not saying you just say hands off, they raise themselves. But I'm just saying at some point, I think we chase our kids so much that even we lose sight of where we should be and what we should be doing. And so, you know, at some point when a kid gets a certain age, that transition from high school to college or whatever, yeah, you keep being a parent, but at the same time, I think there's a little bit of that. You have to kind of let them go, as hard as that is to do, and they need to be able to know where to find you. And if you're that anchor in your faith and your understanding, it won't be hard to find you. And they'll always know where you are, and that'll always sit with them. But I also understand that that's probably a tough thing to do, and who knows, maybe it's not the right thing to do. That's why I wanted to ask.
I would say, yes, they have to, I mean, as we said, they have to work out their own salvation. We can't save them ourselves. We can't, if we aren't the ones who have to make that decision, they have to make it themselves. Our point, our goal is to, as you said, anchor where we're at, anchor in the Word, and anchor where God wants us to be, so that they can see it in our lives. If we live it, hopefully they will want to live it as well. And yes, you're going to have those who reject it. I mean, all of us have family members who rejected it. But we still have to be ones who, strong enough in our own faith to be able to, as the Word tells us, to be able to defend it with anyone. But we don't stop loving them. If they fall away, we let them know we don't agree with them, but we don't stop loving them.
Yeah, well, and I think maybe an example that can clarify what I'm saying too is, I would say where my parents did a good job with this. As I got older and I started having, some of my friends started going in different directions, and one of them got into music and their band got really good, and we would go watch them all the time. And my parents would always say, we would love to go watch them. They saw these kids, some of them grow up too. But they're like, they only play at bars. And it's just not something we're comfortable doing, If we were to go to a bar, even if it was just to watch, some kid we know playing their songs, if someone sees us there, they're not going to see it that way, maybe. And that's not something we're going to do. So they chose to just hold their anchor fast and stay within the means of faith. And, I went out and chased them to all these venues and did all this stuff. Now, as I got older, I realized, man, I'm glad that they got their music career off. But at the same time, I understand where my parents were coming from. You just can't do that. And sometimes I think that's what we have to do is we have to stay and it's like, look, children, as much as I would love to be there for everything you're into and everything you're about, this is where I have to stand my ground and say, if you want me, I'll be right here. If you're going to go chase that, I'm going to be right here.
Yeah, and it comes back to also, you have to know your child. What is the best way to reach them? Because all children are different. I mean, granted, I only have one child, so I only have to deal with it one way. But from listening to other parents who've had multiple children, each child is different. And so what they need is different. And, backing off maybe what they need. Because if you start pressuring someone who is rebellious by nature or, by character, I guess, then they're just going to push you further away. But again, we don't want to accommodate. We don't want to let them know that that's what is okay.
And I don't want to enable or confuse them.
Right. And so
Your question, I don't know, for me, the first thing I heard was you were giving advice to somebody about their children.
Yeah, they had
Or recommendation.
They had a kid that was, going to chase their dreams a little bit differently than they would. And, they wanted to support them because that was their child, but they also didn't know what to do. And they just felt like it kept happening. I said, at some point, just be that anchor and, man, you just got to hope they come back. Because, I don't know if it's accurate to use it in this context, but, it's kind of like in Jesus' story of the prodigal son. He didn't go chase him. He let him go. And then he came back and he rejoiced. And I don't know if that's a good application of that story, but that's kind of something I think about.
It's hard to give you advice over the advice that you're giving because like Lance said, every child is different and every situation is different. I think you look as a parent, we're given God's word to live by and to use as our guide so that we're equipped. your relationship with God is the most important part of your parenting role, because you're equipping your kids for their relationship with God. So as they segue into an adult environment, an adult world where they're making their own decisions, it will be because of your relationship with God and how you have equipped them as a parent. You're kind of God in their world. It's making decisions for them, and then you slowly equip them to lean on God by themselves and make a decision to follow God or not. And then they're adulting or learning to be an adult, relying on God and not so much on you. So in that decision of transparent, when they're transitioning to that adult God relationship now, instead of adult dad relationship, you know, as the parents kind of phase out, have to let go, and God's got to kind of be one of their sole resources, along with your advice if they listen to you. It starts back with you, and so it's hard to know how to advise somebody on how to do things, because you don't know what they have equipped their child to do as far as the relationship with God.
Yeah.
And I think that's where kind of our class is that we're equipped, and therefore we can equip our kids, and we can help them become adults and be followers.
But is it good advice to tell people and to tell myself, like I said, I'm preparing myself, that you just sometimes have to just let your kids go for a while, and not that I mean cut them off, but I'm just saying, it's like, if you need me, I'm right here, but I'm not going to chase you down yelling the things I've been telling you your whole life.
I think once your kids get to that age and you've raised them through high school and then adulthood, and if you still have that stance, I think at that point, you may offer that advice.
Yeah.
I'll just be frank with you. I love you, and I think you've got a lot of wisdom, and I can learn a lot from you, but I don't know that if I was raising a teenage child today that I'd come to you and say, Jeff, give me advice on that, because you haven't been there, right? So I think we have to be real careful on the advice we're giving others. Your nature, what I've seen is you always direct it back to the Bible, and that's what they need to do. If your faith is where it needs to be, as a Christian, as a father, as a husband, odds are their faith's not going to be any stronger than yours. So you've got to maintain, right? You've got to live your life as you're the strongest one in the household, and you're there to help your wife get to heaven. You're there to help your children get to heaven. But you can't mow. It's consistency, and that's what you're all saying, that you've got to be consistent with it. You can't give in along the way. But for me to, if I'm at that stage and somebody's telling me, well, let them go, and I'm thinking, well, why I don't have kids that age? I don't know yet. You know, part of that may be coming from, and I gather part of it's coming from the way you were raised, and for you, that sounds like that was the right way. Would it be the same for all of us in this room? I don't know. Probably not, because we're all a little different.
Yeah.
But I think to love them and show them principles, and it starts. It starts before your kid's age, right? That the way you react to situations, the way you react to stress, when somebody's ill, somebody says, pray for me. Well, do you stop right there and pray with them? I'll do that. I'll pray for you. Let your kids see that somebody says, I need you to pray for me. Let your kids see, let's pray right here and right now. Because you're teaching them, you're training them on how to react to stress. You're teaching them, training them. And they're going to go through it. I mean, probably all of us in here, right? We've fought our battles, and there's some ugly stuff within all of us that we're not proud of. But glory be to God, through the blood of Christ, He purified us. So it's teach them how to react along the way. I don't know that I'd give the advice, if you're asking that, I don't know that I'd give the advice to let them go. But I don't know what that situation is. I know I can think of a very specific situation of a member here in this congregation that years ago, because of their situation, they were crying. Their heart was torn out with something that was going on with one of their children. And the best advice that I believed at that time was, you let them go. You let them go. You can't continue to enable them. You need to let them go. But there's been other times where somebody comes up, say, just hang in there with them, love them through it. They'll work, they know, keep in there. So I don't know that there is a cookie cutter way outside of what this is, if that makes. So I'm not criticizing what you said, but I don't think there's a blanket approach. I think there's so many things that go into that decision. But the very advice that what I hear you say you offer, I've given that to a parent before. You gotta let them go, because it's ripping you out, and you're not helping them by constantly bailing them out and helping them.
Well, and I think, you know, I'm looking at it from the perspective of being an example. Like if they're wondering how to behave, I'm trying to also be an example, not only of, hey, I'll be here if you need me, but also an example of, this is how you do it. If you set your anchor and you keep it anchored, when the storms of life come and the waves blow you this way and that way and every which way, whenever they calm down, that anchor is going to pull you right back to where you were, or at least really close to it. If you don't, you're going to find yourself lost at sea every time the waves of emotions come.
And that's a lesson they have to learn before they hit the swing of life, right?
Yeah.
When the storm's going on, what do we do? Well, throw the anchor out. What do you mean throw the anchor out? What's that even mean, right? So those are things that you all are doing such a great job of raising your daughters. They're exposed to what they're being exposed to. I have never been in your home, but I would assume what happens there is what I see happens here. So you're planting the seeds, you're directing them, you're guiding them, and as a parent, obviously that's your responsibility. But I think you're exactly right. But you again, they need to know what that means well before the storm hits.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna run into one. They're gonna have storms. We're promised of that, and the more faithful they are, there's more storms that's going to. I mean, Satan. You know, I've always heard, and I think there's some truth to it. If Satan's not after you, he's already got you.
Yeah, it's tough. I watched some people I really care about struggle because their parents always were chasing them and saving them,
Yeah.
and it was just really tough to watch that. And I'm not so sure that not chasing them would have made it better.
At what point?
But it's sad to say it wouldn't have made it any different.
Which time though? Do you never chase them, or do you stop after the first time?
No,
You
yeah.
stop after the 15th time? That's where the advice becomes real tough if you don't know all, you know. Louis Casbaum, he would always say the same thing when things were going on. And there'd be maybe a sad situation happening in a house with a marriage or a child or whatever. He'd always say, Jimmy, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. And there's a lot of wisdom there. We don't know. Most people will only allow us to see what they will allow us to see, right? So there's more, you know, there's more in behind that scene. So I think continuing to love them and encourage them and pray for them. You know, things we talk about in equipping the saints class. You know, I don't want to study. What do we give up? No. We continue to love them. We continue to pray for them. We're patient with them.
Yeah.
But you can't enable them.
Yeah.
You can't enable them. But
Yep.
And a lot of this is dependent upon ourselves as well. As they're younger, we're the authoritative figure. And that role changes over the course of time. And as they get older and get more dependent, you still can wield that if need be, but you also become more of an advisor in a lot of aspects. And as long as you're communicating and you take it to the level you need to, and that's going to be dependent upon us in a situation, I think as long as we have the chance to, whether it be the authoritative voice or the voice of advice or the resource that they're looking to, I think that's a great thing, as long as those doors are open. And at times we have to say, you know, let them make their own choice or whatever, you know. I've told my kids, you know, that I don't watch my speed. Well, I do watch my speed, but I probably don't go right at the speed limit. I'll go miles over, but it's nothing for my son or my wife or somebody or my daughter to go 5 to 7 miles over the speed limit. You know, and I'd say, you better back it off some, you know, and back it off. And I talked to Logan the other day, and he was in a rush to get out to church camp or something like this. He got pulled over, got a ticket. I wanted to say easy come, easy go. And he knows what I've taught him over the years, you know, you better watch him. And he says, well, I was 114 over. I said, well, what was the speed limit? Well, it was 60 or 65. And I thought I wasn't quite to the turnpike yet, but I was trying to get up to church camp. And $150 later, you know, but I didn't say easy come, easy go, because I knew he was already beating himself up about it. I just listened at that point. So like I said, it changes. You know, you can say, well, I told you, you know, or you can say, I'll do this, you know, or rein it back a little bit or something, you know, but sometimes you just listen. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's tough, you know.
And Wes, I think to your point, and also leans to kind of that transition to adulthood. I mean, no, I have not raised adult children. I do not know what that is like. I do not have that experience. I can only look back at how I was raised. And when I had made that transition to college and then beyond, you know, it was and Jeff, kind of your point, my parent, you know, I went to a state school. I didn't go to Freed, I didn't go to York, I didn't go to a school of preaching, I didn't do anything like that. I went to a state school. And, you know, my parents didn't call me every Sunday morning to make sure I was up to go to services. They didn't call me every afternoon to ask how morning services was. And, you know, there was, like, some of my friends that, you know, I found it was a large university, and so, of course, there were others of us that were members of the church, and some of their parents did. And one day I was out to lunch with my mom and dad, and, you know, I kind of said, Dad, why don't you, like, you know, I hear this from these other people and you don't. And I said, you know, do you just have that much faith in me, you know, type thing, being a little young and arrogant. And he looked at me and he said, no, I've taught you for years this 2-word phrase. And I said, what's that? He said, God understands. And, you know, those 2 words are both the most comforting and the most fearful words to hear.
Yeah.
You know, when you elect to forsake the assembling of the saints, God understands. When you're at home caring for a sick child or you yourself are ill, God understands. And, you know, those words just resonating with me and times when maybe I didn't make the best decision at my wise age of 19, 20 years old. Sometimes his response was, God understands.
Sometimes that
God understands your
back.
Yeah. So you need to go make this right with God. And a lot of times that was his advice. And, you know, sometimes it was comforting and sometimes it hurt a lot to hear. You know, it really did.
Yeah. Young adults are going to make bad choices. And teenagers make bad choices. And you got to transition from the bad choices that already make it to the bad choices they're getting ready to make. How do you even do it? Does that reside
I
with
didn't
you?
quite get through my lesson today.
Well, I apologize for hijacking it.
No, that's what this is for. This is good
Like I
stuff.
said, I trust the collective wisdom.
For the next minute or two that we have, let's briefly talk about adult children. We'll at least wrap this section up. You know, obviously they're fully responsible at that point. Hopefully they've calmed down some, less rebellious. They are more stressed because they have more responsibilities, are busier. They can see you differently a lot of times. And that's where our investment is. We need to get to know them as an adult. Develop friendships and mentorship with them. But avoid giving unsolicited advice. A lot of times they want to get through it and learn themselves. And my advice always to my daughter was, just remember, a wise person learns from their mistakes, but a more wise person learns from other people's mistakes, so they don't have to go through those same mistakes. And so hopefully she will see that and understand where that's coming from. Don't criticize their parenting in public. You can criticize their parenting if they're not doing it the way the Bible teaches us to parent, but don't, criticize in private as that's going. Praise in public. Let them make their own traditions. Just because, you know, we always went to grandma's house on Christmas Eve doesn't mean they always need to go to grandma's, your house, which is grandma now, on Christmas Eve. They have other grandmas to worry about too, if they're married. Don't bug them about getting married or having kids. That just seems to kick the can further and further down the road a lot of times. Call before you visit. They want to get their house a little bit in order, just like you've always done when you got company coming, right? Those are a few things, you know, we can think about as we strive to, again, develop the friendship and mentorship with our kids. What other investments can we make in our adult children as we finish today? Still don't stop parenting. I mean, they need good advice. They need to, you know, see that coming from you. And as Jeff says, we need to be anchored in the Word, and that's where they need to really start. They're seeking their good advice is from the Word.
I would just say be careful with the person that your child brings into the relationship, because how you raise your child is not how they were raised.
That's a great point.
Everybody complains about their in-laws, and that's typically all it is in-laws come in and start doing things that they don't realize it stresses the other out. Everybody agrees that my mom is the hardest working, sweetest lady on the planet. She does not realize that when she walks into her daughter-in-law's house that she barely knows and just starts cleaning or working on something. She sees it as, mom likes to have purpose. She likes to be busy. She likes to help.
Just
She
mom
wants to
being
be
mom.
mom.
Yeah.
She does not realize she has just offended to the most egregious level.
Now, see, that sounds like more like a voice of experience.
Because I didn't realize how bad it was until the two wives started talking to each other. I said, oh, this is a thing. Poor mom. But then they realized also, she just has, I said, here's the thing, here's what you do. Clean your house, do your thing. You just pick a spot and just take it could be clean clothes, be dirty clothes, whatever, just dump it in a pile and just let that be what draws her attention. and then you don't have to feel like she's, you know, dusting what she just dusted. You know, you can,
You can always give her a job too. Ask her, hey, I need help with this. Would you mind helping me with that? She would love that, your mother, I would say. Based on what
but
you
yeah,
said.
it's,
That's hilarious. Hey, we all have those situations. We can talk hours about that, I'm sure.
preach.
I mean, our investment in adult children begins at birth. I mean, that's where the investment starts to for ourselves, you know, to invest in ourselves, to be able to invest in our children. That's really where it starts for all of us.
You bet, you bet. All right, well, I appreciate all the good advice, and as we continue to parent, remember we're all in this together. And we're here to help any way we can.
Well, when I'm an old man and one of them beautiful little girls has to take me to their home or something, and I can't believe that my children just yell at me all the time.